Hello and welcome. This is part one of a video series called How to Unfuck Your ClickUp. In this video, we're going to be talking about removing obscurement and ambiguity. So what is obscurement? Obscurement is when you have a bunch of things that basically block out what's important. So if you've ever heard the expression trying to find a needle in a haystack, that's the experience. So in our case, we've got a bunch of tasks that might not be super relevant anymore. Either they're old, obsolete, low priority, or just kind of, they haven't actually been approved yet. They're just ideas, kind of thoughts we had one time we chucked in that don't need to get done right now. And all those tasks are kind of creating this big list that we have to scroll through. And it's actually hard to find the key tasks that really need to get done to move our business forward or our work forward or whatever we're doing. So that's obscurement. Ambiguity, similar thing, but it's when you have, again, a bunch of tasks, but they all could be done, but you don't really know what to do first. So if you've done anything around productivity, you know that when you come in the morning, you get started, you want to kind of hit something straight away and get right into it. What ambiguity does is when you get in the morning, you have to sit there and kind of stare at things and go, well, I could do that, or I could do that, or you end up spending like half an hour trying to figure out your priorities. And that can actually happen throughout the entire day. You can end up spending the whole day kind of spending most of your time and effort just trying to figure out what you should be doing rather than actually doing anything. So we want to kind of make those less of a problem and remove them from our workspace. So you can see I've got some examples up here, just a bunch of kind of random tasks here, due at different times and in different statuses right now. Okay, so first of all, let's try and figure out what are we trying to find here. So the phrase kind of, you want to hear the signal through the noise is really relevant. So we want to figure out what is noise and what is signal in our workspace. So things that are noise are, sometimes people use tasks as headers, like they might put in here like client requests, and then kind of list out, ones underneath that. That client request task, not an actual task. And so it can sit around it and block things out. Another really common one is old tasks. So if kind of had something that was relevant a couple of months ago, felt like it needed to get done, but it was never really high enough priority to actually get done. And it could be still sitting around, but either it doesn't need to be done, or it's just never going to be done because it's not that important anymore. Another one is reference information. So if we had a task here, maybe something like ClickUp/commands. And we have them all listed out there. Useful, but again, it's something that doesn't actually need to get done, but it's still kind of like cluttering up our to-do list. Another really big one is ideas. So oftentimes we want to capture the ideas that we have, and that's really good because we don't want to lose them. We want to have the option of choosing which things are going to kind of progress our business or work forward the fastest. But if we have kind of ideas lying around, it can really build up that huge list of tasks and ambiguity and start to obscure the things that we actually definitely do need to do when there's just kind of like a bunch of maybes. So they're not bad to have, but we do want to make sure that they are separated out so that they're not going to cause us problems. So step one to deal with all of this is to get tough. And by that, I mean we need to define what are we actually going to do. And the reason I say we have to get tough is that oftentimes we have a bunch of stuff that are good ideas. They reasonably could and should be done, but they're not going to be. We have a certain amount of time in the day, and things that are going to be permanently low priority, even though they're good ideas, just aren't going to get done. So they're fine to keep, but we want to our end goal is to have a single list with here's what I'm going to do today, here's what I'm going to do later this week, and here's what I'm going to do a month is a bit long out, but you kind of want to have really clear, concise lists of what I'm doing now. So let's make these. So actually, before I do this, so you could do this two ways. You could have actual lists, or you could do it with views. Right now, I'll do it with actual lists, just because it's really easy for a demonstration. So I'll make one for today, and I'll make one for this week. Okay. Now I've got this big list of 77 tasks. I need to figure out which ones are actually going to get done and which ones are just clutter. Any task that, even if it's a good idea, even if it should get done, if we're not going to do it, then it's just a wait. It's a weight, it's taking up space in our to-do list. It is an emotional weight and a motivation weight, because we'll feel bad at the end of the day for the fact that we haven't made it that far through our to-do list. And instead of having kind of like that like dopamine feeling of success of like, oh, I got my to-do list done today, and it kind of keeps you feeling good and feeling motivated. Instead, we'll have kind of like this bunch of dead weight in our to-do list. It's it's going to kill that. It's going to hold us back, slow us down, and make it unexciting to get through any work. That's absolutely the opposite of what we want. We want to, as much as possible, have our system promote our mind working well, and that includes motivation. We want to be, to the degree possible, excited about our work and kind of like feeling good about how much we're getting done. So what we need to do is deprioritize some tasks. Stuff that's good ideas, but we're just not going to get done today, maybe even not get done this week. We need to put them somewhere else so that maybe we can see them when we need to, but they're not in our way. So what I suggest is that you make this easy for yourself. There are really two options here. We can either delete tasks if they're just totally old and obsolete, but oftentimes deleting tasks feels bad. It feels like we're admitting that we're never going to do it. And even though that might be true, it's hard to admit sometimes. So we want to kind of remove that barrier and make it really easy to deprioritize tasks. So if you can delete stuff, great, do that. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, what we'll do is we'll create a place where we can put them and say, hey, these tasks are still important, and we're going to come back and look at them at certain points in time, but they don't need to be weighing on us every day. They don't need to be on a daily to-do list. So what I'm going to do, just for keeping things conceptually easy, I'll create a new list, and I'm going to call it a Sunday/maybe list. That term comes from GTD, David Allen, and it's just a really good idea. This is stuff that we're not saying we're not committing to do it, but we do think it could be a good idea someday. And the idea is we'll come back and look at this list. Could be once a week, could be once a month, whatever works. So we'll go through and say, okay, actually, yeah, this one's kind of like, this one's paused. It's not done. Nothing's happening right now. Same with this one. A couple of these. And actually, I'm only selecting out a few here. You probably wouldn't be getting rid of most of these. So like anything that's not actively going to get done. Now, if you do have long-term things, so it's going to take 3 or 4 months, you also don't want that on your daily to-do list. But that's when you might create a similar list to this, but it might be like a projects list. Like this is something that's continuing happening, but it can kind of sit in my projects, and there might be tasks to do from that each day, and they can go on my to-do list. But like having the whole project sit in your to-do list, it's just going to take up space and feel bad because it's, oftentimes they move really slowly when they're big projects. So all the stuff that is, ideas, old, but we're not quite willing to get rid of it. Anything that should be done, or it seems like, we feel like we can't just delete it. We feel like it's a good enough idea, or we're supposed to do it, that we can't get rid of it. But we're also being honest with ourselves that, look, it's just not going to get done today. There are other higher priorities. There's other stuff that needs to get done. So look, this is not happening today, probably not even this week. So all of those, we can either drag and drop them into our someday maybe task list. And we can map some statuses here. I'm just going to put them all in to do. If you set up statuses on that list, you could just have them map exactly over. Okay. The other way is if dragging and dropping can sometimes be a bit funny. You can just, once you have them all selected, use the move up here to move them into the right place. Okay, and so now 33 tasks. Oh, I've got quite a few here. Okay, so I've still got far more than I want here. If you're actually doing this kind of on a today list, you probably want to have just 5 or 10. So let's say actually the ones I'm going to focus on today, actually 5 or 10 might be too many. The ones I'm going to focus on today are these, I'll say 4. Okay, that's what I'm actually going to get done today. And then your weekly list might be a bit bigger. And you don't have to do today and this week. You can divide up your time however it makes sense to you. So perhaps we'll say, actually this week, I'm going to review all of these, finish these ones in progress, and get on to several of these concepts, and also make some new ones. Cool, so they can all go into my this week list. Now, assuming you've gone through and actually kind of done that really carefully, kind of checking what you're actually, what is, regardless of what should be done, what are the highest priority things you're actually going to end up focusing on. Those are what should be in these lists. And then you have this kind of concise list of, look, this is what it's going to be for today. This is what it's going to be for this week. And then each day you could kind of select the ones you're doing today and move them into your today list. That is if you were doing it in lists. You can, of course, also do this in views. So you'd have a today view or this week view. I'll touch on that towards the end of this video because that's a really good solution for a different case. And in particular, you can make those views private, which is, you can't do that with lists. So yeah, if you are worried about deprioritizing tasks and what people will think of you for the fact that you're focusing on what's really important and not these other ones, even though everything should get done, having the views is good for that, because as long as you're on a business plan, you can just make them personal and no one else needs to see that. Okay, so what I've just shown you is a really quick way to start pulling out the key tasks. But what we get left with is this bunch of stuff that we kind of don't know what goes where. So that's kind of like the quick win. The more complete solution is to start kind of just dealing with it, so you actually feel like everything's organized at the end of once we're finished. And that's typically better because you want to feel like you're on top of everything and that everything is going to be taken care of. The first thing to think about there is having different things in different places. That's the biggest solution to this. The reason we had trouble initially, the reason we're getting things obscured, is we have the wrong things mixed together. So what we've done is we've pulled out the tasks that will actually get done. Regardless of priority, these are the tasks that will actually get done. We want to kind of segregate even further than that. So we also want to separate out particularly ideas. Ideas is the main one. Anything that is a thought that we had that hasn't yet either been approved to spend time on, or if we're working for ourselves or we're the boss of the business, we haven't yet decided to spend time on it. So it's still in that kind of could be done phase. So we'll call them, for now I'm just going to do lists. So I have an ideas list. We'll go through and say, okay, these are great ideas, but as of yet, I haven't decided that they'll be done. Once we decide to do them, we'd have to think, well, when am I going to have the time? We don't want to just there's a really easy mistake to make, which is to say, oh, these are all good ideas, let's do them all, chuck them in the to-do list. Immediately you're overwhelmed, immediately you have no prioritization. It just kind of blows out your to-do list. So when you do move these things from ideas to to-do list, or to wherever the next place is, limit yourself. Don't just chuck them all in because they're good ideas. Decide how many can get done and only move that many across. Leave the rest in ideas. Ideas is the best place for things to hang out because it'll keep the rest of your system running smoothly. If you dump everything into should be done, whatever that category looks like for you, it's too much. It's really easy to blow your system out. So leave it in ideas until you have the time to do it. Not until you think it's a good idea, because they're all good ideas. Leave them here until you have the time to do it. Also, you're probably likely to have some different task types. So for example, if you have a list of clients, they should obviously be in a clients list. If you might separate different types of works, you might have, audits and, process X, process Y in different lists. The value of that is that it quickly allows people to understand the context of these tasks. So right now, these are all mixed together. I have no idea what the context of each of these tasks is. But ideas, okay, well, I know that these are all ideas. Someday maybe, okay, I know that these are things that probably are low priority. Whereas if you have a list called clients, think, okay, well, each task is obviously a client. It just helps create the structure and context that helps people's minds immediately understand tasks. You'll have people understand ClickUp and move through it quicker if there's clear context set for each of your lists. Now, you might have really important tasks in multiple different lists. So you might have some, particularly if you do have things, I'll make them here, some lists like clients. If you're in real estate, you might have something like houses. You can have all sorts of different things, different contexts. And you might have important tasks scattered across multiple of them. That is okay. That is fine. What we can do is create a view to pull those together later. Right now, it's more important to have clear contexts than it is to have things in one place. That's kind of one of the superpowers of ClickUp. Don't worry too much about having things in one place because we can always pull them together later. So get things clear first. Okay, so first was to segregate things out into clear places. Usually it's different lists, though you can do it a couple of different ways, but have clear contexts for each type of thing. Second is to have a clear system of ordering. So that means, what am I going to get done first? So I've kind of created a very basic one here by having today and this week. That is essentially a system of ordering. I'm going to do these tasks first, and then those ones. And each day I'll select which ones of these are going to be done that day. So there's still some manual work, some on-the-day work to be done there. It doesn't really matter what system you use, as long as you have one. The easiest one, perhaps, is the priority flags, since they come built in, as long as you have the ClickUp on. So you can simply set things as urgent, high, normal, low, or nothing. This is fine. Just be aware that once you have, once everything is urgent, then there's no ordering anymore, because they're all the same. So there is some segregation, but you tend to have multiple things in the same category. So that's fine if it works for you. You can also do due dates. So you say, okay, look, I'll just do it in the order they're due. If they're all due today, you can add a time. Some people like time blocking. So they say, okay, I'm going to do this in the morning, I'm going to do that midday and that in the afternoon. That's fine. You can divide them into chunks by time like I have here. So today, this week. It can be useful to have a secondary way of organizing. So, okay, I've got 4 tasks on today. Which one am I going to do first? Once you get down to as low as 4, either with chunking it this way or using flags, usually it's not too hard to pick out one of those ones. But there is a little bit of time saved mentally if you just have this one as first, like just zero thought. You know exactly what you need to do first, rather than having to choose which one to do first. There's a slight efficiency gain there. Another way of doing it would be to have either a number or possibly a drop-down field. Basically, it's the same thing as priority flags. You might even call it priority, but you can just add more options. So instead of just having 4 flags, you could literally just say numbers, or you could say any system you want. You could say high, medium, low, whatever. It just gives you more options. So more tiers means less in each tier. If you went with the numbers, you can just add assign numbers to them. So let's just create a new field here. Number 1, call it priority as well. By the way, never do this. This is super confusing when you go to deal with it later, because they're all named the same thing. And that way you can kind of just write in what your priority is. It can be frustrating there, because once you finish one task, it can be annoying to then move everything up in priority. You often end up just going to bigger and bigger numbers. Or if you want to kind of slip something in, so maybe this task should come after this one, but before that one. Like, okay, well, what do? Do I do 2.5? Yeah, anyway, it works. It's just you have to choose how you want to go about it. Sometimes people will kind of do things like they'll start at 10 and go up by 2s or something, just so it's easy to always slip another task in later. Okay, that's kind of a bit in the weeds. The key point is have any system of prioritization or ordering, probably better to say ordering, and use that. So whatever works for you, whether it's time blocking, today, this week, priority flags, numbering, you can literally just order things by like the order it's in the list. That's perhaps the most easy. Obviously you can't be sorting by something. So if you're using dates, you could sort to do that. I think perhaps most people might even just order by dragging and dropping. It works pretty well. So as a really good first step here, what I'd suggest is create a new view. It can be a personal one if you like, where it's going to pull in all of your tasks, and do a really basic filter. So it could just be assigned to you, or if you don't have things assigned to you, it might just be like the locations that you're responsible for, and then start going through and saying which ones of these am I skipping over, which ones I'm like that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, I don't need to do that. Pay attention to those ones. Say, well, why don't you need to do that? Or maybe they are important, but just not priority. You're going to do other things first, and so you can't pay attention today. They'll come soon. Or maybe they're ideas that never got off the ground. Or another big one is maybe they're just unclear. Like I'm not quite sure what needs to be done there. Or if I do know the outcome, I'm not quite sure of the steps. And what that means is work needs to be done in order to clarify that task. So that can even be created as a separate task. Oftentimes I'll just rename them. I'll just like something like define, or define what needs to be done. And so I'll do that work to kind of get clear on that task, and then I'll figure out when it needs to be done. And again, even the work of defining that might be low priority. So it could end up in one of your low priority lists. Once you've identified those things that you're kind of ignoring or skipping, either delete them or move them somewhere that's like a low priority, like a someday maybe list. Or if you're not moving things, if you're just doing it with views, we'll talk next about how to mark things in different ways. So mark it in a low priority way, so that it's not going to pull into your do now lists. Or you can also get it off your plate. So usually that's delegating it. If it's not important, you would have deleted it already. So usually the option that's left is delegating. Either delete it, deprioritize it, delegate it, or if it is important, you're probably going to do it soon. I also have a tool, the ClickUp Checkup, which will significantly speed up identifying those junk tasks so that you can do something with them. And I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. Okay, and finally, particularly in the case where you're working with a team and you actually can't create these lists and you can't move things around, what then? So there's actually a really good way of dealing with that. So I've been kind of saying that we're likely to use views. So what I would suggest is you have whatever views you like. It could be, high priority. It could be, you've seen how I work. I do today and this week, and I'll make them personal. So whatever way you want to think about your tasks, and I'll pin this so it kind of pops out to the left on its own rather than being the drop down. And I'll make another one called this week. Same thing, personal, and I'm going to pin that as well. And I'd also favorite these, by the way. Just really good for navigation. Add to favorites. My favorites are here. I prefer them pinned along the top. Get to it really quick. Oftentimes when we're working with a team, either there isn't a filter that exactly matches us, and we kind of can't do anything, particularly if we're not assigned. The assignee means something to the team, and so we can't mess with that or else it'll mess up the bigger systems. Same thing with due date. We can't change when it's due, not even to time block. We can't change the priority because that might be, in some cases, that might be being used for the overall team's need to get that thing done. And so we can end up like locked down, like there's no fields that we can touch to deal with our own personal productivity system. And so what I suggest, either making yourself, and this is one where I'd be tempted to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. But if you can't do that, lobby whoever you need to lobby to get this made. Make a new labels custom field and give it a name. I've called it filter before, which is confusing because there's a filter function. You could also call it personal or come up with a better name. If you do have a good name for it, chuck it in the comments below. I am really looking for a really clear name for this. For now, I'm going to call it personal labels. So the idea here is that anyone on the team can add labels to this field. So for me, I'd say something like J or JS today, and then JS this week. And the great thing about the labels custom field is that it can have multiple values selected at the same time. So I can say, well, this one's a today task for me, but someone else in the team could say, well, this is a medium priority task for me. And they could add their own labels that says, maybe their initials and their medium, and add that. So we both have our productivity systems, they're overlapping and they're not clashing with each other. So I can go through and add my various labels to all my tasks that are relevant to me. And then in my personal views, I can put a filter based on that. So I say, okay, personal labels is JS today. And now I've got my today view perfectly aligned with my today tasks. Be aware that if you do have a big list of things, you can go through and multiple select. There's different ways in different views. On this view, it's over the left-hand side. If you hold shift, it will select multiple. And at the top, we can set custom fields in bulk if you need to speed it up. So same thing here. I'll go to this week and say filter personal labels is JS this week. And now I have really nice views set up. I think I didn't save that one. For exactly how I want to do my system of prioritization or organization. So even though I might be within a bigger team that does things a different way, I can still do it my way. And that's the real power of ClickUp, particularly if you use that personal labels custom field. Frankly, I think this is something that every single workspace should have. I think it should be standard, and I'd highly recommend to use it in, maybe if you're kind of a soloist or got a very small team, you might not need it, but just about every other case, I would suggest that this is well worth having. It makes life much, much easier for all of your staff, all of your team, and everyone feels like that their preferences are taken into account in ClickUp. And that's a really good thing for adoption and for keeping people happy and using ClickUp, and even just being effective in their work because it works their way. So highly recommend that. Okay, so that is what obscurement and ambiguity is, and the main ways that we kind of deal with it in ClickUp. So as I mentioned before, if you do want to massively speed up optimizing and clearing out the junk out of your ClickUp account, I have created a tool for that. It's called the ClickUp Checker, and it is a 23-point checklist. You just go through each of the checks. It takes a few minutes to set it up initially, but then once you've got it set up, it's all just saved views, a couple of dashboards, and it's really quick to go through. What that's going to do is it'll help, first of all, clean and fix your ClickUp workspace if it's already gotten bad, and then keep it really high performing. Keep things clear so that people are moving quickly. Keep all of the locations and hierarchy all nicely tight, so that ClickUp is really helping your team rather than holding them back. I suggest that checklist be done a couple of times a year. So in a bigger account, maybe once a month, or else once every quarter. And you can get that right now from the link below the video, and you can have your ClickUp account transformed by tomorrow. So go do that now, and I'll see you in the next video.